Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for coming out tonight. I know it's a bad evening. Just before we kick off, if I could ask everyone to put their phones on silent. Also, these theatres get really warm, so if you want to remove jackets and stuff now, fire away. I'd just like to, without further ado, introduce Mr. Micheál Ó Muircheartaigh. I'm sure you're all familiar with Micheál's work, but just a quick background. In 1949, I think you were studying at St. Pat's in Drumcondra, the 18-year-old Micheál, along with 10 other students from St. Pat's, took part in the test commentary for a hurling game. Believe it or not, and I asked him was it true tonight, it was actually the first time he had seen a hurling game when you were 18 years old, which is hard to believe considering the life path you took. And then in the mid-80s, of course, Micheál replaced the legendary Micheál O'Hare as RTÉ's lead commentator, and he developed his own style of commentary, and the accent was unmistakable, and you can tell he's a native Irish speaker through the way he commentates on games. He's a true lover of the GA, and he always brings great enthusiasm to games that he commentates on. And so it's just my pleasure, just on behalf of both the Business Society and NUIG, to invite Micheál up here to speak to us tonight. Thank you.
Tá sé cosúla sin sépa maid an dánig, ní léna chun tosacha. Once Joe Connolly is there, that's enough. Now, an cúpla pictúra bhí Osúr Gordon sin. Maurice Fitzgerald kicking that line ball to draw the game, that drew the game against Dublin. You might have noticed that Tommy Carr, who was the Dublin manager then, he passed by him. And what Tommy said to Maurice before he kicked it, "It will be no trouble at all to you, Maurice." And there's a lovely picture. The next time you're in Semple Stadium, they have lovely photographs now as you go in. They call it the Field of Legends. Mostly hurlers. But Maurice is there. Lovely shot of Maurice taken before he kicked the ball. And the funny thing about it, Dublin is written on the ball. It was one of the Dublin ball as he kicked over. And I think that's Johnny Dooley, showed Johnny Dooley scoring a goal. Now there was another goal that Johnny Dooley scored. There were 2 points down, playing against Wexford. And Brian Whelan had there were 1 point on it. Brian Whelan had a free, a 65, to draw it. And Brian told me afterwards, didn't go for it, I was afraid I'd drive it wide. I said I'd lob it in around the goal and let somebody do something. Now, Johnny Dooley made contact and scored the winning goal. Now the following morning I was going to schools in Wexford with Damien Fitzhenry, the Wexford goalkeeper. Phelan and Niall was on in Wexford, and we'd arranged for a week that I'd spend the week with Damien going to school. Primary school children, they'll ask you what's in the mind. I said a few words at the beginning, and then I said, now any questions you have, Damien will answer. And all the hands were up. How did you let in that goal? And Damien was a very decent sort of fellow. He was well prepared. He said, I watched the Sunday game last night, and I counted 12 players in the square. He said, that's 24 legs and 24 hands and 12 hurleys. It was hard to see anything. And he thought that would fix it, but the hands were up again. But it went in between your legs. So from then on, any school we went to, Damien explained how it happened before they could ask any questions. Now I know that your students, you'll all have great jobs in a few years' time, I hope, and you will, and you should believe yourselves that you will. Agus while you're at school, buin tang of us. whatever stage you're at in anything, you should always enjoy it. Now, I spent a long number of years kind Micheál Pelladori, O'Monaghan, camogie players, greyhounds, golf, a lot of things. And I never took myself too seriously, but I always enjoyed the whole thing. Sport, I think, is meant to be enjoyed by players, by spectators, by managers, by commentators, by journalists. And that's the outlook I had it from the beginning. Now, Gafisa Coed Lahorin, the Green Ogre. I think the real good players, and I had the privilege of knowing a lot of players over the years. And to me, getting to know the players, that was just as important as having the best seat in an All-Ireland final, perfect view of the match and all that. But getting to know the players, and I learned from all the great players, two things: confidence. They were always fairly confident that, I could do that, we could do that. And the next thing, they were also willing to have patience and perseverance to keep it going. And strangely today, the Vime Mohinati Madnino went into the canteen for a cup of tea. I was doing a little piece, would you believe it, for the God slot. That's what I'm doing now, just today. And I noticed, I think 6 or 7 young, they'd be over 20, but not a lot, maybe about 25 years of age. And they looked to be musicians, but I didn't know. They weren't all Irish. And the next thing, a producer came in and took them away. And on the way home, I was listening to the Pat Kenny show, and they came on as a group, musicians, singers, and they called themselves the Overtones. And they had this thing I was talking about. I never heard them talk until I heard them talk on the radio. They came together by accident in London. It must be 5 or 6 years. And they were all into music, and they were playing whatever they did, and they thought they had a nice sound together, and they said they'd stay together. But nobody was spotting them or discovering them or anything. So they had to go working, painting houses and all that, but one of them said, we had the belief all the time, we will make it someday. Then someday, when taking a break from work and they were playing their instruments on the side of the street, and a lady passed and she stopped and said, that's a nice sound. And she put them in touch with someone, and they haven't looked back since. But they always had this confidence, yeah, we will make it. And keep at it, keep persevering, don't give in. Well, Shin, that's a message I have for young people. You never give in, no matter is it the books or anything, is it life in general, is it sport, you don't give in. Stalin Berlug Mergominnig, the favourite phrase of Mick O'Dwyer, especially when Kerry were beaten. It's over, we didn't win, we weren't good enough, let the winners enjoy their victory. And then he used to point out that way, nobody has won the next one yet. And he'd say, don't say to anyone, but we're ahead of everyone for the next one. Now that's the type of confidence you need. Now, Lohigme Imro Iroa, one player, again, you might have heard of Colm O'Rourke of County Meath. Now, I know Colm since he was a minor with Meath. I think he was a minor in 1975. And maybe 74 and maybe even 73, because he was very good all along. And I remember being down in Longford in the spring of 1986. I never forgot the date on account of what happened afterwards. A seminar, a winter's night, killing a bit of time. Myself and Colm and a few others on a panel, and we were being asked questions. As nur bhíonn rud go léir thart bhíonn mar sí síos a caint agus a gold brain tay. As dúirt Colm Lumsa, I'm nearly 30 years of age, and I have no medal. I have nothing. Not even a medal with my school or my club. I'm nearly 30 years of age and I have no medal. But what he said after that is what impressed me. But I'm not finished yet. I'm nearly 30 years of age, but I am not finished yet. And he went on then to win maybe 4 Leinsters, 2 All-Irelands, 2 National Leagues, All-Stars, 3 Meath County Championships with his club Screen, and Texaco Footballer of the Year. Now, none of that would have happened, except I am not finished yet. Neil Dara Lumps before. So it's mahan on that issue, that's a good outlook to have. Now, parent, we went to Gums Lesson Radio from 1949. Now, it seems a long time ago, but it's not that long ago. And the amazing changes that have happened. So another advice I always give, you know, when I go to schools and things, don't be afraid of change. Everything has changed. Now, there's no comparison in God's art to the life the way it is now to what it was now bhí Micheál Ó. Now, no dog mission dining, 15 years of age, to go to school in a preparatory college for teachers and down in the Cork Gaeltacht. So only afterwards I thought, I had never made a phone call in my life. Don't think I had seen a phone. I was never on a bus until that day, until I got a bus from Dingle into Tralee. I was never on a train before. We got a train from Tralee to Cork. Stayed overnight in Tralee. It was the first time I had stayed out of home in my life. That would be true, I'd say, most people that were travelling out that time with me. So, look at today's. I'd say everyone 15 years of age nowadays would have been abroad even. Not alone would there have been places all over Ireland that have their own mobile phone. Now these are all changes. And I find, you know, there is an inclination to be against change. But in hindsight, most changes are good. You need only look at Croke Park today. What was Croke Park like 50 years ago? What was it like 75 years ago? There's no comparison. Neither is there any comparison with the way things are now to what they'll be in 50 years' time. So change will keep and nearly always change for the better. And I got a good indication of what Croke Park was like in the 1920s, when a good friend of mine, he died last year at the age of 103. And he was a man that won 3 or 4 All-Ireland hurling medals with Kilkenny. His name was Martin White. He lived in Dublin. I used to call to see him every now and again. And he was great company about what things were like. Now we have a few people from Donegal here. There'll be a massive night in Donegal later on when they'll be getting their All-Ireland medals. There won't be a place big enough in Donegal to hold all the people that will want to be there. No matter what the price of the tickets are, they're great value. And I asked Martin White one time, do you remember, Martin, when you got your first medal? First All-Ireland medal. You know, it's a great occasion, and Joe would have experienced that. There might be others here that will. I hope they do. And I said to Martin White, what was it like? They won in 32 and 33. And he said to me, we won again the following year. Now, he didn't answer my question at all. Do you remember getting your first All-Ireland medal? We won again the following year. And I said again, Martin, do you remember getting your first one? First one is special. And then he said in the month of March the following year, that would be 3 years later, we were going to America. And I was waiting for the train in Kilkenny station to get a train to Cork to get the boat to America. Going on a wonderful adventure. He had never been outside of Ireland before. And he said the county secretary passed by. And he stopped and he said, Martin, did you get anything for that? Put the hand in the pocket, there you are. And then he was going away and Martin got a bit of courage and I shouted after him, I got nothing for that match we won the year before either. And he came back and put the hand in the other pocket and gave him that. Now that's how medals were given out. That had been the 1930s. Even in the 1940s, another Limerick hurler, but was true all over the country, Dick Stokes, wonderful hurler. Do you remember getting your first All-Ireland medal? 1940. Well, he said, I came home from he was a doctor and he was qualified at that stage. I came home from work one evening. My mother gave me a little envelope with Dick Stokes written on it. Opened it up. The All-Ireland medal was in it. And he said to her, where did you get that? I was down in the shop this morning. They lived in Croom, a small little town in County Limerick. I was down the shop this morning and a man with a lorry of timber stopped and he came in. Didn't know me, but he said to the woman in the house, do you know, do the Stokes live around here? Oh, they do. This is Mrs. Stokes. Just he gave him the medal. Man driving the lorry timber to come. That's how he got his own medal. Huecas le dia tá sé sin galera. But I asked Martin what was Croke Park like, and he played there, would you believe now, he was buried not 12 months ago. He played there, first of all, in 1925 in the Leinster Colleges final against Blackrock College. Leinster Colleges final. And he said when the match was over, it was a wet all day, I couldn't get a drop of water in the dressing room to wash my face or hands. There was no running water there that. And when you look at it now, to give you an idea, changes happen gradually. Tashi that. Now, Maradut and Rodenshin, I began in 1949, and it is true that I had never seen a hurling game before. Now, there were maybe about 20 of us all together. A few from UCD, a few from Drumcondra, a few from other places. Radio Éireann, as it was at the time, they had sent out a notice. Trials in Croke Park to find a commentator, Osprey. And we were all in under the old Hogan stand. Hogan stand number 1, the one that said now is number 3. And it was like for all the water being in here now, the pitch out there, you could see none of the pitch. But the box outside was linked with inside, the adjudicators would be here, and in turn then people would go out and do 5 minutes. Now I went out, for the start it was a hurling game. I was given a piece of paper with the 2 teams on it, and I recognised one name. He was playing in goal for UCD. His name was Micheál Ó Muircheartaigh, Ted Hurley. And he was a hurler from Dingle because his father was the bank manager who was from Tipperary. That's how he had hurled. And knowing that the adjudicators couldn't see anything, they didn't know what was happening outside, the moment the red light went on for me to start, he was bringing off the greatest save that was ever seen in Croke Park, even though the Schlitzer was on the other side. And he cleared it out towards the sideline. It was deflected out by a member of the opposition, a Fogs player, who was called out, Micheál Ó Muircheartaigh, to take the line ball. Play going on the other side of the field. That didn't matter to me. I was out for having a bit of fun and adventure, thinking I'd never again be in here in Micheál O'Hare's box. He took a great line ball and it landed in front of the railway goal, and there was a dreadful foul of CD full forward. And by then he was back at the canal goal. He was called up to take the 21. While he was drawing up, I mentioned his brothers who were at school with me in Dingle, and his sisters whom we used to meet when the convent closed. And I spent, while he was coming down, it took him a hell of a long time to go from goal to goal. Now my 5 minutes stretched to 20 minutes, and those that hadn't got an audition yet were told to go home. And I was asked there and then, would I be willing to broadcast the Railway Cup final of 1949. Football, thanks be to God. And I'd have known the Kerry players and I knew of the Cork players, and that was the first game I broadcast. And again, that finished up to be an adventure as well. It was a very good game. It ended in a draw. It was played of a Thursday. And the Munster Council decided to keep the players in Dublin because the replay was fixed for the following Sunday. Now, I don't drink, but I gave a lot of the time between Thursday and Sunday with the Munster players. Somebody had rented a house for them out in Kimmage and brought in not bottles but barrels of drink and musicians, and all Thursday night and a spell of Friday, and then people went for a walk back again. Somebody said we'll go to the zoo on Saturday. There was a bar in the zoo in those days. And it was another mighty day in the bar in the zoo. And then finished up on Saturday night in the Gard, the club. Plenty of drink there and no closing time allowed. And they were in some state going up to Croke Park on Sunday. 3 of them had to be, the word that was used, they had to be steadied in Barry's Hotel. It was suggested that a walk up rather than go up in a bus would be good for all. Meanwhile, the Leinster team, they had gone home on Thursday. They had a training session on Saturday. But the replay on Sunday, you can look it up on the records, it was the biggest win that Munster ever had.